The first notable example of a video game remake, or in this case a collection of remakes, was Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo, which included the first 3 Super Mario games as well as the Lost Levels, all fully remade in beautiful 16-bit pixel art. This collection of remakes is still highly regarded to this day. However, for every exceptional remake like Super Mario All-Stars, there are remakes that receive undeserved critical acclaim or just completely miss the mark on what made the original game special. A deeper analysis of many remakes reveals the loss of the original vision of the game, making for an inferior experience to the original. The non-stop game remakes cost the industry by negatively impacting game preservation and artistic intent because of a lack of innovation and risk aversion. With the recent announcement of the Halo remake and everything I've heard and seen about it, I feel that now is the perfect time for me to make a video on this subject. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about the Halo remake for a few minutes. The Halo remake is the perfect example of what's wrong with many game remakes. Visually, the game looks incredible, but why are they reusing assets from Halo Infinite and Halo 5 for important things like the Marines, Covenant, and Forerunner architecture? It's one thing if you reuse some assets for unimportant background objects like rocks or something, but for such important assets like the Covenant, Marines, and the Forerunner architecture, it's just unacceptable. The Forerunner architecture in Combat Evolved looks weathered and old because, well, it is. It's ancient. In the remake, all of the Forerunner architecture looks like it's brand spanking new, with a metal sheen so pristine that it's almost blinding. The elites, grunts, and jackals are just the banished from Halo Infinite. The designs of the original game were not recreated here, and it's the same thing with the Marines. They also are reusing animations from previous Halo games like Infinite for the Marines and Halo Reach for the elites. These aren't bad animations at all, but once again, not Combat Evolved, and it's going to affect the gameplay too. The elites in Combat Evolved have distinct behavioral patterns, and animations from Halo Reach don't fit into those patterns. The lighting for this remake looks too bright and generic as well, whereas the lighting in the original Combat Evolved is far more reserved, as you can see here, and this difference in lighting creates a tonal mismatch. But back to gameplay, you can now sprint and aim down sights with any weapon. While it might not seem like a big deal from an outsider's perspective, the original Halo was not designed with these mechanics in mind because it didn't have these mechanics. Being able to run circles around the Covenant is not Halo 1, and it's also probably going to take away from the dread and horror in the flood levels as well. There's also some aspects of level design that are clearly not being taken into consideration with this remake, as you can see here in this tweet from Jamie Griesmer, who was essentially the lead designer for all of the Bungie Halo games. Again, these examples might not seem like a massive deal on their own, but it shows that Halo Studios, previously known as 343, does not understand the intention behind design decisions that were made for the original game, and there's probably going to be a ton of other things like this in the rest of the levels. Everything I've mentioned up to this point doesn't sound very faithful to the original game, now does it? But believe it or not, it gets worse. Halo Campaign Evolved, the remake of Halo Combat Evolved, will not include a multiplayer PvP mode.
What? How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair.
Halo Studios says the remake of Combat Evolved is focused entirely on campaign and co-op, leaving multiplayer out to honor the original while expanding co-op with crossplay and 4-player support. Having crossplay is always a massive win, but not including competitive multiplayer, one of the core aspects of the Halo experience, is not honoring the original. While Halo Studios is rebuilding and expanding the story of Master Chief on Installation 04, as the name suggests, Halo Campaign Evolved does not feature any player versus player multiplayer.
Say what?
In a group interview at Halo Studios, I asked the developers why the team decided to only focus on the campaign for this remake. They responded by explaining the studio wants something that stands next to the original game, expanding the co-op functionality and making this one thing as good as it can be. We're not trying to replace what is a masterpiece in the original. We're trying to basically make something that stands kind of shoulder to shoulder with it, using new tools, new energy, to get a little bit of a fresh take on some things, but honoring the legacy, says producer Damon Kahn, who notes that having 4-player online campaign co-op with crossplay and cross-progression all for the first time was extremely important to get right. So yes, it's a campaign experience, but it's not only a single-player experience, and Halo has always been about reconnecting, a strong sense of community, and then also telling those stories and sharing those experiences together. And we believe that is where, we're really going to be able to bring people together with this new release, Khan added. Yeah, you know what would really bring people together on this release even more? If you had PvP multiplayer like the original Halo did. You all suck.
You guys suck.
The deal is, every 2 hours, there'll be 2 16-player games starting. 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
I do these LAN fests like every 6 months or so. Some of the people that are showing up are regulars. There's always new people. It's just Halo ties it all together.
All right, hi, I'm Blackstar. Yes, the one you know and love. Cyber Free.
Arizona. That's Shishka.
I'm Shishka. Nice to meet you all.
Mr. Smiley. Yeah, Mr. Smiley. Brian from Bungie. We got someone from Bungie here. That's right.
There's 35, 40 people here, and they're all about Halo, and they all post on these online forums, and they're all like these internet beings that like we finally get to shake hands with.
Oh, they're running across. They're across. They're everywhere. There's like 14 of them inside the base.
Right now, we have this game going here, which is 16. Downstairs, I was just down there. They probably by now have at least a 16 game going on. They keep on bringing in more stuff, and it seems to be expanding.
Got the flag. I'm out the front. That's just playing offense. Oh my.
What it comes down to is getting together with people and being able to yell at them. Being able to, talk about, oh, it was so great when you killed me with that rocket. I didn't even know it was coming,
Shishka's aim is horrible.
Sorry. Oh my God.
And being able to, reflect on the gameplay afterwards.
Blue team got the most captures. I got the most kills. So I get one of the prizes.
The original Combat Evolved only had local and LAN multiplayer, and Halo 2 was really where the competitive mode took off with online multiplayer via Xbox Live, but that does not make Combat Evolved's multiplayer less important. It's a key part of the experience, and they're just leaving it out completely. A PvP mode almost didn't make it into Combat Evolved at all, and Hardy LaBelle, who was the multiplayer lead for Combat Evolved, didn't fight to make sure that the PvP multiplayer mode would make it into the game for release, just so that 24 years later it could be left out completely in an unfaithful remake. Now the good news is, you can still play the original Combat Evolved via the Master Chief Collection on modern hardware, and it even has online PvP. The Halo Remake is coming to PS5 as well, which is absolutely insane, but they should port the Master Chief Collection to PS5 so that the PS5 players who never owned an Xbox can actually experience the original game as well. So even though this remake is pretty unnecessary to begin with, in my opinion, as the original Combat Evolved still plays excellently, looks good, and is available on modern hardware, albeit as part of a collection rather than being a one-for-one port with all the exact menus from the original, at least the original game is still available on modern hardware. Unfortunately, there are a lot of video game remakes where this is not the case at all. Silent Hill 2 Remake, while I absolutely adore it, and it was one of my favorite games of 2024, unfortunately is the only way to play Silent Hill 2 on modern hardware. Although I've never played through the original Silent Hill 2 on PS2, Silent Hill 2 Remake was well received by die-hard fans of the original, but even so, there should be a way to play the original game legally on modern hardware. That's the thing with a lot of these remakes, whether it's intentional or not, a lot of the time it's as if the remake is trying to replace the original game rather than stand alongside or celebrate it. Silent Hill 2 Remake is just called Silent Hill 2, Demon's Souls Remake is just called Demon's Souls, Shadow of the Colossus Remake is just called Shadow of the Colossus, and all of the Resident Evil remakes have the exact same title as their original counterparts. Even with the remake of the original Resident Evil, which was originally released on the GameCube and to this day is still the gold standard for video game remakes, it feels wrong to me that it has the exact same title as the original game. At least with the Resident Evil remakes that have been made up to this point, you can purchase and play the original games on modern hardware. The same cannot be said for Silent Hill 2, as I mentioned previously, Demon's Souls, or Shadow of the Colossus, for example. This is how these remakes are affecting game preservation. If there's a modern way to experience a classic game via a remade version, why do studios need to port the original game to modern hardware? That line of thinking is what's affecting game preservation, especially with a game like the Silent Hill 2 remake being so well received. Why would Konami port the original game to modern hardware? Now, to be fair, this hasn't prevented other studios from porting their classic games. Pretty recently, OG Resident Evil 2 and 3 got ports to PS5, as well as PC via GOG, and Resident Evil 2 Remake was incredibly well received and came out all the way back in 2019, so it's definitely still possible for studios to port their original games to modern hardware, even after they've made a successful, well-received remake of said game. It's still not a guarantee though, and it's something that worries me. There needs to be some indication that these are remakes of existing games, whether it's made clear in the title or via some other method. Medieval on PS4 handles this issue in arguably the best way possible because even though it shares the same title as the original game, the original PS1 version of the game is included within the remake as an unlockable. More remakes should absolutely come with the original game like this as a way to make sure that people know that what they are playing is a remake if they didn't already know, while also preserving the original experience. Another way in which the barrage of non-stop game remakes are affecting the games industry, at least in the AAA space, is risk aversion, which is also directly tied to a lack of innovation. Why spend so much time and effort making a new Halo game, or better yet, something new entirely, when you could just remake Halo again, but this time it's also on PlayStation? Why make something new when you can cash in on nostalgia? Development costs and the time it takes to make AAA games today have made executives at big studios follow this line of thinking. Not only that, but of course people are going to naturally gravitate towards something that they are familiar with. It's been proven time and time again that remakes of legendary games will sell regardless of how well received they end up being. Remakes are safe, but greatness isn't created under a safety blanket. These games that are getting remakes were bold, experimental, and innovative for their time. The developers took risks, and many times the games would be better, or at the very least more interesting as a result. That's why the indie and AA spaces are absolutely killing it right now. The companies aren't corporatized, and the games aren't as expensive to make. They're smaller scale, but more refined. Look at a game like Expedition 33, for example. Most AAA studios wouldn't dare to make a game as bold as that today. And that's the tragedy of it all. For every remake of a classic game that AAA studios push out, whether it's an excellent remake or not, we could instead have gotten a brand new game in a series, a new game in a series that hasn't had a new entry for a long time, or better yet, something entirely new altogether. Artistic vision is another thing that is unfortunately being lost in translation with many of these remakes. As I mentioned previously with the Halo remake, it matters that the Covenant and Marine designs were not faithfully recreated. It matters that the Forerunner architecture doesn't look ancient like it did in the original game. Art tells a story and sets the tone, and when you're remaking a game, the art needs to evoke the same emotions and tell the same stories that the original did. It doesn't matter if the models or lighting look better from a fidelity standpoint, or if the music sounds higher quality, if there's a tonal mismatch from the original, because tone and atmosphere are vital to any experience. Demon's Souls on PS5 is the perfect example of this problem. The gameplay and level design is practically one-for-one to the original game. The enemy and boss behavior is exactly as it was back in 2009. The game from a fidelity standpoint looks incredible, but Bluepoint, the studio who did the remake, changed the designs of enemies and bosses without understanding the intention behind From Software's original designs. The The UI looks flat and boring as if it's from a mobile game, whereas the UI of the original has depth and this incredible worn stone tablet aesthetic to it. The lighting was changed to look more cinematic, contrasting blues and oranges all the time, but the original game did not use that lighting scheme. Every area had its own distinct lighting scheme that added to the personality of each area. Many of the music tracks were remade to sound more epic and gravitas, and while the remade tracks sound incredible, they don't align with the tone of the original. Lastly, gameplay changes can make or break a remake. Ultimately, gameplay is king in video games. If the game doesn't feel good to play, or it's too much of a departure from the original, or entire modes or sections are missing, everything else falls apart. With the Halo remake, adding sprint or aiming down sights for all weapons is not necessary at all, and I don't see how these mechanics can enhance the original experience, especially when the enemy behavior doesn't seem to be updated to account for these changes. As I mentioned before, no PvP mode is an absolute crime because of how important that is to the Halo experience. The remake of Resident Evil 4 is a game that I didn't think needed to exist in the first place as a die-hard fan of the original game, but I was genuinely blown away with just how incredible of a job Capcom did with that game. The remake added more fluid movement in place of the tank controls from the original, and to account for players being able to move around faster, they adjusted the enemy behavior as well. These adjustments modernized the gameplay without taking away the feel of Resident Evil 4's gameplay. How you navigate through a crowd of enemies and your positioning is still just as important as it was back in the 2005 original. With the Resident Evil 2 remake, the perspective completely shifted from top-down to over-the-shoulder, and yet the gameplay still retains the feel of the original game because of the resource management and navigating around enemies. Game remakes affect game preservation by leaving the original game stuck on old hardware. They provide a safe, risk-free option for big studios to cash in on nostalgia, which has made it so that there's less innovation and new ideas as a whole in the AAA space. They sacrifice artistic vision for fidelity. They add unnecessary new mechanics or cut large portions of content or entire game modes. Unless something drastically changes from now until its release, the Halo remake exhibits all of these problems, which is why it's a perfect example of what's wrong with so many game remakes. More than that, it's a perfect example of how game remakes are costing the industry by negatively impacting game preservation and artistic intent because of a lack of innovation and risk aversion. Overall, it's nice that these games are reaching new people who never got the chance to play the original, but if the art direction and tone doesn't match the original, or there are unnecessary new gameplay mechanics that contradict the original rather than expand upon it, or there are entire modes missing or sections of the game missing, then it's really not the same experience. But what do you think? Are you tired of the non-stop game remakes like I am? Do you agree with the points made in this video? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.